life can get rough. You get knocked down, but you gotta get up. Keep going.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Sovereign CEO podcast. I have with me today Jenn Pike. Jenn, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Jenn is, I'm going to say, my functional diagnostic nutritionist. She's a registered holistic nutritionist, a medical exercise specialist, and she specializes in women's health and hormones. So, you really do a lot of things: business, health, you're a podcaster, you're a mother, lots of things on the go. Is there anything that I left out there?
No, all the things, all of the above.
Well, I love your work. You're
Yeah.
very schooled in everything that you do. I see that you have such a passion for health, but I love how accomplished you are at the same time. And I know it's maybe not something that we need to be praised for as women, the amount of things that we do, the amount of things that we accomplish, but at the same time, like you've created so much. You've created an empire. You have a multi-million dollar business. A lot of people have looked at what you created and just said, like, wow, how do you create something that big and that vast while still staying healthy and in alignment as a woman?
Well, I mean, it's a moving pendulum because there have definitely been times where I didn't feel, at my best in terms of health, whether it was, physically, I may have felt okay, but maybe emotionally or mentally or my nervous system, I didn't feel so good. And I think the thing for me is I've been doing this for so long. Like for me, I registered my first company when I was 17 and I'll be 45 this year. So I feel like I've literally been doing some level of this work my whole life. And because I'm so passionate about what I do, but also the work that I get to do is I am a student all the time as well. So it doesn't ever actually feel like for me that I'm just waking up as a boss every day and going to work. I have really built this life and, ultimately ended up building this career because I kept learning. I kept putting myself in the arena. I continued to be a student. And as I would learn, I would go and deliver. I would learn, I would go and serve. I would learn, I would go and share. And that, even on the days when it was really difficult or I had realized I said yes to too many things. And, we'll talk a little bit more about that because I loved what I did so much and I was choosing it. It wasn't being chosen for me. I didn't work for a company or corporation that was like, this is what you have to go to do. This is the way you have to do it. I got to really steer that ship. So even in times where I wasn't feeling my best, I got to choose the pace. I got to choose what was going in my calendar. And even though I didn't always make the best decisions, there's something energetically very different when you look at times that maybe didn't feel like the wisest choices. When you look at it and you're like, well, frig, I'm the one who put it there. It's like there's a different reflection point where I didn't have resentment against like anyone else other than myself of being like, why did you do that to yourself? Like, why did you put so much in there? The other side of the business for me is that it's been fun. Like, even in the hardest times, it's been so fun because my whole business is actually not built on health, it's built on community. And so everything I've done, I have got to build community. I am so grateful that when I was building my company, it was in the time of boots on the ground in person with like real life humans. And, it has always been such a joy. I love hearing women's stories. I love bringing other women together so that they can really recognize that you are not the only person going through this and really break down so many of the barriers and the walls we put up for ourselves because we have a lot of embarrassment or shame or fear that like something's wrong with me. I must be the only person feeling this way because everyone else there looks like they totally have their shit together. And, for a lot of the time, a lot of women would come to me because they'd be like, well, you look like you have your shit together because you've got this going on and that going on. And I was like, yes, and right. And the and is like, we're all human. No one has it all figured out. I just don't let the things I don't know or that aren't going well hold me down for long. I'm just like, okay, cool. This is what's happening right now. Don't love it. Would prefer something else. But I know that for me, that reflection and keeping myself in motion and staying connected to what I love is ultimately what helps me to turn the ship around. And so I also have just never been attached to, if something didn't work, I was not like, oh my God, that was a failure. I'm a failure. Like, what's wrong with me? That wasn't good enough. I was just like, whatever. All right, what do we want to try next? Like, maybe I just throw it on the wall this way. What if we do it like that? And so I feel like a lot of those things have helped me get through it. And then when I became a mom, I mean, that just changed a lot for me, because when I started my business, I was a teen, and I was in my early 20s. I was like working 70, 80-hour weeks, multiple jobs. So was my, boyfriend back then, but now husband. And we just fucking loved it. It was so fun. We both have always loved money. We've always loved impact. We've loved people. And so it was so fun that I was like, oh, when I have a baby, like, I'm just going to wear them. I'm just going to wear my daughter on me. And, she'll just become part of my world, and it'll just be so easy. And then the universe was like, hilarious. And my daughter screamed for the first 9 months of her life. And I couldn't do any of the things that I thought I was going to be able to do. And, it broke me in a lot of ways. At the time, I was like, this didn't feel like a beautiful breaking. I was like, that actually, I felt like a huge failure as a mother, because I was like, this is all I ever wanted, was to be a mom. And I can't do this. Like, I don't know how to connect with her. I don't know how to calm her down. I don't know what she needs. And it really brought me to my knees. And that was probably my first point of like true burnout, where the burnout wasn't a result of anything that I'd been doing too much of or I didn't understand. It was literally burnout due to circumstances that were completely out of my control. And when I finally recognized, like, I can't control her. My job is not to control her or to mold her or to Ferberize her or to like get her on a schedule and like, train this child. It is literally to just see her for who she is. The same way I saw the women that I worked with, I was like, wow, I'm not doing that with my daughter. And when I did that, and I just stopped trying to fix her, that is when everything changed. And I was like, wow, okay, like that was such a surrender experiment for me. And it softened me in a lot of ways. And it forever changed me, because I couldn't go back to the same pace, and I didn't want to, actually. I really didn't want to. By the time that she was around 9 months, and I was like, oh, I actually feel like I'm starting to enjoy this now. Like, I went through a 10-month and 10-day pregnancy because she was late. And then it's like I went through a whole nother year of another pregnancy and birth before I really got to connect with her. And so it was this really interesting journey that just taught me a lot about, I had built everything in a very masculine way. I just, planned it, organized it, did it, grunted, and it was fun because I didn't have anybody else depending on me. And if I got tired, it was just me I had to worry about. I lived with my parents still, like I could just rest, I could do whatever. And then when I had my daughter and then I had my son, and I was like, oh, wow, like I'm not sleeping. I'm like feeding people like with my body. Like I can't do this anymore. And then I just stopped actually wanting to do it that way. So when I had my son, and I was still teaching classes and personal training and consulting, nutrition, and I was writing for magazines and I was doing all these different things, I was just like, I'm really tired of feeling like I'm running around everywhere for a paycheck. Like, why? I don't need to do this. I can do this differently. And I didn't know what that meant. And I was literally out for a run one day, and I just kept hearing myself say, like, I need more simplicity. I need more simplicity. And a friend of mine called and was like, hey, did you see there was a studio space that's actually open? It was like a real estate agency that's open. You should go and open your own studio in town. We don't have a studio in town. Like, you could bring everything you do in one spot. And I was like, oh my God, no, I don't want to have my own business. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, maybe if I'm in one location, like this will be my simplicity. And the universe will be like, oh, you're right here. We can actually now bring you everything because we've been following you to multiple addresses. But if you're in one spot, we can like deliver. And so I opened up a studio that I called Simplicity. And it was like the most incredible journey and the hardest. You've owned a studio, you know this. Like, it was this, beautiful junction point of like everything I ever wanted And the hardest things I didn't even know were coming my way. And it was so much responsibility. And it's actually kind of funny when we name a business and we put a name on the outside, because it should just be our name because you're the business. Like, I went from, establishing that I didn't want to work a certain way as a mother to then working all the time, teaching all the classes, just doing whatever I could to like keep members in the door. And on the inside of the studio, we were like a raging success. It was, our classes were packed. Everyone was so happy. People never wanted to leave the studio, but I was like dying a slow death. I was just giving everyone everything that I had. And it was this energy of like, please like me, please like what we're doing. Don't leave. And I remember these feelings of like members would come and go and I would like feel like abandoned, or I'd feel like I did something wrong. And I was like, what the fuck is this feeling? Like, I had never felt like that in business before. Why am I feeling like this? And it was just because everything was resting on me, the rent, the paying my team, like everything was on me. And it was like, I have to do the best possible job so these people never leave, because if they leave, the money leaves with them. And I just, for years, I was like, what do you need from me? How much do you need from me? Oh, I have to sacrifice time with my husband and my family and like my own brain. No problem. Like, I'll do that. Just stay. Just please stay. And I functioned like that for the first few years until I hit such a level of burnout that my body literally, like, I couldn't get up. My body was just like, we have been trying to get your attention for so long and send you so many messages. We've tried nicely, we've whispered, we've yelled, we've kicked you a few times, and you just keep pushing through. And so now we're just going to like fuck things up big time for you to the point where you can't keep pushing forward. And so I call it my like, it was my couch moment, which was 4 days of, I couldn't function. I couldn't do anything. I just cried and sweat and fevered and ached. And my little kids at the time taking care of me and my husband. And my breaking point for me was, on the last day of feeling like that, my husband got down like literally on the floor in front of me. And we've been together since high school, like since we were 16 and 19. And he was like, Jen, I don't know where you are right now. I don't know who you are. I do not know what to do. Like, like, tell me what to do. And I was just like looking at him, looking at my kids, having this out of body experience, and just being like, what am I actually doing? And who am I doing this for? And why am I doing this? Like, this is insane. I'm going to die. And I remember having this feeling in my body saying to me, you think you're sick right now. You are actually going to get very sick if you don't cut this BS. And I was like, I'm done. And I sat up on the couch, oh my God, looking like hell, and like hadn't brushed my teeth or showered in legit 4 days. And I looked at Chris and I was like, go get me the phone right now. And he's like, what? I was like, get me the phone. I need to make some calls. And I started to call up every mentor that I had, called up like my original yoga teacher. I called up colleagues that, were doing business. And I just kept getting on the phone with people. And I was like, I am fucking drowning and I'm going nowhere really fast. Tell me something, like, how do I get myself out of this? And, certain people, and my yoga instructor was like, sweetie, this is just your dharma. This is all you'll ever earn. And this is just how it is when you own a studio. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, like you just did. And I was like, huh, no. I was like, nope, not my dharma. Like, I'm not signing up for that. Not happening. Click, call the next one. And the irony is that to get me out of this like masculine do energy, it actually took talking to a man who was, one of my bosses, Jack. And I wrote about him in my, the beginning of my first book. And he was just like, Jen, you're not actually going to die. Like, you could shut the doors down tomorrow. You're going to be okay financially, fit otherwise. But like, here's the question you have to ask yourself. Do you want to go work for someone else? And I was like, no. And he's like, then get off the fucking couch. Meet me at your studio tomorrow. We're going to map it all out. I was like, okay. And I met him the next day and we literally turned the whole studio floor into like pages and pages of notes. And he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. What do you want to do? What do you want to, and just kept asking me until I was like, I don't know. And he's like, I'm going to ask you a different question. Who do you want to help? What kind of impact do you want to create? And those were the key things for me. I was like, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, but I knew the women I wanted to help. I knew how I wanted it to feel. I knew the impact. And so when we started from that place, then my brain just like lit on fire with like, we could do this and I could create this. And that was just this beautiful birthplace of like a creation project that then helped me to completely shift how I ran everything. And that is where this, like, thank you for saying this, empire began, because my brain stopped working transactionally and started to think about things as limbs, departments, profit streams, multiple opportunities to diversify. And it changed everything in my life about how I started to do business. I started to take more chances. I took bigger risks. We reevaluated everything financially as a family. We sit here now in 2024 and, you're involved in a lot of different things financially. We are, but this started for us in 2012. Like we had to sit back, my husband and I, and go, if what we were taught about business isn't actually true, and there's different ways, what about what we were taught about money and finance? Because we were in debt at the time with the studio too. We were in debt. We were like minus $65,000 in debt. And I was like, how the hell are we going to dig out of that hole? Because I can't work harder. I can't trade more time for money. So how are we getting out of this? And we had to really start to look at, is what we know about our banking system, our investments, the statements we're reading every single month, all of those things, like, is that actually true? Because I don't feel like wealthy people are doing what we're doing. And so then we put ourselves in other rooms, and I started to spend time with wealthy people who weren't my friends at the time, but they were my personal training clients. They were people that I knew in communities. And I would just straight up start to ask them, can you please explain to me how you've done what you've done? I don't actually understand, boom, boom, boom. And every single person I asked was helpful. There wasn't a single person that was like, no, I'm keeping this secret to myself. And so then that had my husband and I go on this other journey of, where we are now 12 years later, of it was embracing business differently. It was embracing motherhood differently. It was looking at our finances differently. And it was dropping a lot of fear and unknown, and just like, we're going to try and we're going to trust. We're going to try and we're going to trust. And if this direction doesn't work out, and this is the approach I take in my company with women, the ones that I work with in their health. Like, I'm never going to be the practitioner for somebody that's like, here's your strict plan. You have to do it 100%, report back to me. And, if it's not 100%, like, I'm just going to keep steering you back to doing it perfectly. I'll never be the practitioner for somebody who needs to have it fully laid out like that. So it's been really cool over the years. And now I sit here all these years later in a very different position in business where, we're a very successful company. And I sit back and I'm like, well, what if I don't want to do it this way anymore? Like, what if I don't actually give a shit about what I earn? What if I actually only choose based on who I want to help and what I want to do? I go back to that original question that changed everything for me. And so, yeah, this is where we are now.
Do you know what I see in both those questions, and what you learned about finance was that you had to stop and you had to zoom out.
Oh yeah.
Because when you're just always in the doing, when life is stacking up, you gotta have all these work obligations, client obligations, family things, personal things. What do? You wake up and you just work and you maximize your time and you're super productive, but you never stop to ask yourself, why do I really need to be doing this? Is this the best use of my time? Because there's just so much.
Yeah.
And then that kind of happened with money too. Well, I got bills to pay.
Yes.
We have debt to work off. There's no time to stop and zoom out. So what were some of those things in terms of money when you spoke to these people that were really wealthy, when they were like, hey, zoom out? What were some of those things that they identified for you?
One of the biggest things was, how well do you understand your spending habits? Not just what you're using, what you're spending, but your habits. Study your habits of how you spend money, and you'll identify leaks, and you can start to put some of those, the holes, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you can fill the gaps, you can plug the leaks. And start to really ask yourself in the way you're running business, like, do you actually need to have this physical space where you have so much overhead? Is there a different way that you could do this? Do you actually think you're going to create the impact you say you want to in four walls? Do you need to have a bigger stage, a louder microphone? How could you do that? And I was like, okay. And it took me like 3 years from the time of these questions starting to be positioned to me to actually get to the point where I sold the studio. I knew about a year and a half, 2 years later, that selling was going to actually be what had to happen, but I needed to turn it around first. I needed to take what was a busy studio and turn it into a profitable studio. So I knew I needed to like have other profit streams and bring other people in and start to run programs and workshops. It couldn't just be based on like number of mats on the floor. You can't run a successful business off that. So I had to spend a couple of years of really increasing our revenue generated. And once the revenue generated was up, also work on the profitability of the company and have there be cash flow so I could make it attractive enough for someone to purchase. For me, walking away wasn't an option because I had this bill of debt that I did have to pay. And so I knew if I could sell the studio and I could take that and I could go pay that debt off, that would actually be what would open up all these possibilities for me. And so with Chris and I, with our finances, we started to study our habits, and we laugh about it now. But at the time, my husband hated his life because every receipt, everything he would spend, I'd be like, you have to put it in the basket. Like when he'd get home, I'd have a basket. And he was like, and it was, we had it like connected on our phone where when you would spend, like you'd get a notification. I'd be messaging him on his job site. And I'm like, why did you spend $2 at Tim Hortons for coffee today? And he was like, oh my God, I just want to buy fucking coffee. Like, stop it. A toonie is going to be fine. And I was like, no, we have to like stick to the plan. We downgraded our vehicles. We moved into smaller vehicles. So we had less, payments every single month. We scrubbed our life. We really looked at what can we actually trim and get rid of that we don't truly need right now. And can we do this for a short, focused period of time, 1.5 to 2 years, so that we can set ourselves up for the long game. And so at the time, I used to watch this show on TV called Till Death Do Us Part by Gail Vaz Oxlade. It was on like Global. And she really taught people how to live with cash jars. So you would take a certain amount out at the beginning of each week, and you had this budget you set, and you would divvy the jars up for like your groceries, your entertainment, your gas, your childcare, whatever it was. So we did this, and we did the jar system for a year. We didn't use a credit card. We didn't use, now if I was teaching people this, I would actually teach them a different way to utilize a credit card, because I actually think there's a lot of power in using a credit card when you get to a certain point. But for us, we did everything cash. And, we didn't dine out. We didn't go do the things. And we actually had so much fun that year because we had to get really creative. Oh, we want to go take the kids to do something for a day. We would go on like massive hunts for the best parks everywhere, because you could just drive to a park and it was free. And we would like pack the snacks and do the things. And we started to host like dinner parties with our friends and take turns, like dinner clubs at houses instead of going to restaurants. And we just did all these things. We learned a lot about our spending. And then we got down to work. And what was really cool is in the beginning, we were getting to the end of the jars before the end of the week. And we'd get to the end of the week and we'd be like, okay, pasta and beans again for dinner. But because we were so committed. And by the end of this experiment, we always had money left in the jars. And we started to learn that we actually needed a lot less than what we realized. And the business was becoming more profitable. I found an incredible team. I did a teacher training program, which really allowed me to like groom and develop and bring in my best members. Where like I had members, these incredible women where literally if I was sick, I could have called those members to teach my classes. They just knew it, and they knew how to hold the space. And I was like, I'm going to actually create and run my own teacher training program. I created a 200-hour training. I trained 9 of the most incredible women who I am still friends with today, who went on to become our dream team of instructors. And I went from teaching 20 classes a week to 8 classes a week. And that was like getting my life back. And then when this was going on, I started to put myself back out into the community. And I was like, I'll teach a workshop, and I would go and teach for free at places. And I still do free stuff all the time now. Like I'm a huge believer in collaboration, and that sweat equity never actually ends in your business. And so then I just really got out into the community, and I networked, and I went all over like York region, Greater Toronto area, got myself into teaching at conferences. And so I started to build up this awareness of who I was and what I was doing outside of my actual community, because I knew when I was going to sell the studio, I needed other people to know me who didn't live where I lived.
Mhm.
And online was starting to become a thing. I sold the business in 2015, paid off the loan in full, which felt so freaking good. And in 2016, launched my first online program. Had no idea what I was doing. I ran it from my Hotmail account. I had no one helping me. I manually was entering in everyone's email. I started a program called 99 Inspired People. I had 111 women join my first program. I had a full-on nervous breakdown when I did my first registration, because I used to drive to work every day praying to make $2,000 a month to bring home for my family. I was only making enough at the time to pay for daycare, which felt awful because I was like, I'm working so hard and so much, and my take home covers someone else looking after my kids. And I always felt guilt and I always felt shame as a mom. I was just like, God, I'm half-assing it over here and I'm half-assing it over there. And, my family always got the leftover crappiest parts of me at the end of the day after I'd give to everyone else. And so I used to just pray, literally pray in my car every day. If I could just make $2,000, my life would completely change. Because at the time I was only bringing home like, I don't know, 800 and something dollars profit a month. It was literally just enough to pay for daycare. And then I sold 111 spots into this program. I had an $18,000 launch. You would have thought I won the frigging Lotto Max. I was like, it was so unfathomable to me that I could do this. And then I froze, and I was in this accountability program, and one of the members was like, how did the launch go? And I was like, oh my God, it went so well. And I did an $18,000 launch, and everyone was like, and I burst into tears. And they're like, these don't feel like happy tears. Like, what's wrong? And I was like, what if I could never do this again? Like, what if that was the only time I'm going to be like, I get teary-eyed even thinking about it. I was like, what if that is the only time I could make this kind of money? I don't know. I don't know how I just did that. And I don't actually know how to do it again. And that maybe that was the only 111 people I know. And I just went into this whole spiral, and I could just feel in my body as well that at the core of it, I didn't know how to hold money because I'd never had that kind of money before. And my nervous system was like so uncomfortable with having it. And then I couldn't spend it. It sat in an account and I literally couldn't spend it because I was so afraid I'd never be able to make it again. So in my head, I was like, this is the emergency fund. And I had to that was the first time I've ever heard of a money story. I read Kate Northrup's book that year called Money at Love Story. And
That
it
one.
really I was like, oh, wow, I have some big blocks here with money and holding it. Because my story growing up was, we're very fortunate for everything we have, don't ask for more. So when more started to come into my life, I was like, oh my God, I can't, no, it's not right to keep more. Who can I give it to? Who can, where can I put this? It's not safe to have more. Don't do that. And so I had to really work on that in order to bring in more abundance. And so I did that work. I continue to do that work. So it was really hard. And then I remember and then I launched again and I launched again. And all of a sudden I was generating $5,000 a month, $8,000 a month. When I hit $10,000 a month, for sure, it was like we won the lottery. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, who needs a car? I can buy someone one. Who needs my mom was like, my bed's uncomfortable. I was like, I'll buy you a new mattress. She was like, you don't have to buy me a new bed. I was like, I can buy you a new bed. I was doing this thing again, whereas I was bringing more in, I was like, who can I help? What can I do? And so it just built and built and built. And then for me, my biggest year in business was actually in 2020. And so what was cool is when I sold the studio in 2015, I stayed teaching in the business for one more year. And then I was like, I got to get out. And then I crashed again. And I think I went through a little bit of, PTSD from how hard I had worked to build this thing. I did want to sell it, but at the same time, I mourned the loss of it. I sold friendships. I sold a community. I sold this place where these women were my family and I knew everything about them. And so then I had a lot of guilt around that. And my body for the next year, I had all these ideas of things I was going to create and do. And I literally just drank tea and walked along the water for a year. I was like, and cooked. I couldn't, every time I'd try and gather myself up to do something, my body would go lie back down, not yet. And then
Got stuck in this exact same patterns of,
oh yeah, for
you know,
sure.
now it was more profitable. So you
Mhm.
might not have noticed because, hey, I'm making money, everything's fine. And this is where it gets confusing for people. We think of the grind and we think of work that we hate, but you actually really loved all the things that you were doing.
Love.
And it's working, and you're making money. So let's go, go, go. So
Yeah.
running programs, did you have like the YouTube channel and the podcast and all those things at the same time
No,
too?
the podcast I didn't start till 2018. So this is like 2016 at that time. But yeah, I had started a YouTube show, the Simplicity Sessions. I was actually, oh, right. I was also hosting two shows on cable TV. I was hosting two shows on Rogers at the time. I had an exercise show called Simplicity Fusion. And then I had a cooking show, a nutrition show called Living Simpliciously. So I was hosting those shows as well. I forgot about that actually. Yeah. So I hosted two shows that one I filmed in studio that I would have to go and take all the props and create the whole set. The other one we did in my home, in my kitchen. Um, Again, no idea what I was doing, but I was just like, cool, let's do it. It's an opportunity, and had lots of fun. And yeah, got back into that cycle. And then it wasn't really until like 2017, I could start to feel like healing my body from that second round of burnout. I've exercised my whole life. I couldn't go back and do the things I'd done. And so that is when I started to really recognize that at different points in my cycle, I felt very different. I had energy at some points a month and other points a month. Like I just wanted to walk by the water again. And other days I wanted to train hard. And so I started to explore and learn a lot about cyclical living. And I had met Alyssa Vitti and read her book, The Woman Code. And I was like, this freaking makes so much sense to me. Oh my gosh. And so I started to beta test on myself a studio and program that I now run called Synced. And I lined everything up that I was doing based on the 4 phases of my cycle and launched that as, programs, and did all of that. And then the Hormone Project was really that was the becoming moment for me. I had been working with women at that point, in clinical practice. I started when I was 21. So I don't know. I mean, it had been probably 22, 23 years at that point. I was recognizing that I was having the same conversation with so many different women, regardless of their age or what had been going on. And I was like, God, I need to bring you all together. I was recognizing there was a space online. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to figure this out. And at the time, I think it was like Webinar Jam is what I was using, was like the thing back then, and go-to meetings. Again, I had no idea how to do the tech stuff. I still barely know how to do tech stuff, but I was just like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. That was always my thing. And I started to beta test with my private clients the Hormone Project. And in the beginning, it was 10 women, 10 weeks. And I was taking them through, and I was starting to run functional labs, like full blood chemistry. And at the time, I was only running the Dutch test with them. And I was being mentored by the medical director for Precision Analytical, which is the creator of Dutch. I had a blood chemistry instructor that I was working with. And I was just starting to see all these parallels. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, we are so disconnected from our bodies when it comes to our hormones, when it comes to our adrenals and our thyroid, like and the phases of our cycle. And so, that would sell out every single time. And I ran 14 rounds back to back of the Hormone Project completely organically. Like I literally, Carla, as we sit here today, I have never put a single dollar into ad spend in my company and generated a multi-million dollar company. I have not spent a single dollar on Facebook ads, on Instagram ads, on SEO optimization, on YouTube ads, not a penny. We are only now exploring doing paid. And it's because we have started, the well is getting dry organically after all these years. But while I was also creating Synced, the Hormone Project, and that, I was doing tons of free stuff on Instagram, on a YouTube channel, I still teach free workshops every single month. And so there's so many people that are like, oh, you get to a point in business, like you always have to charge for your worth and your time. And I'm like, first of all, be very careful with that energy, because none of us could ever get paid our worth, because we are worth like an infinite amount.
Mhm.
And for me, it's, you have to be able to generate enough leads in a business to be successful. And how you generate leads is you have to become known as somebody who provides resources and not just education and content, but connection, where someone comes into your space and they listen to what you're teaching and what you're delivering. And they're like, you are talking directly to me. Everything you're saying is resonating. And if it's not resonating about them, they're thinking about their family, their partner, their child, their neighbor, their best friend, the version of themselves that they used to be. And so in order to create that type of lead generation where you have people who are like, how do I now work with you and pay you? You have to be doing enough things where you're continually bringing that in. That is the engine that is going to make sure that you have this sustainable business. And so,
Let's put a
you know,
pin in that because I want to make sure that, well, I hope you guys are taking notes right now because Jen is dropping some wisdom. So that is something that almost everyone struggles with. They have
yeah.
the idea for a program, they put it out there,
Mhm.
they get wah wah, one or two people join, it's like really low rates, and then they start stressing out because they think, I need all this tech.
Mhm.
I need to build this complicated funnel system that I saw a snapshot of on Instagram. I knew that's how I used to think about funnels. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, that looks terrifying. What even is that? I don't even know what that is. Or you need to spend a bunch of money on ads. And there's lots of things to look at, like your brand, your messaging, all the things. But you have the same kind of business model as I do, which is freemium. You
Mhm.
create as much free, really good content, not just a trending audio, not just doing a little dance on TikTok, like teaching
Yes.
and putting out more free like I've been actually thinking about you a lot lately because I've been doing paid workshops every month and it's been bringing in some money, and I'm going to switch to free again because you're
Yeah.
right, it's about bringing way more people into your world. I mean, just you coming back into my world right now, I'm already like, frick, I'm going to have to book Jen for another session. I'm going to have to join her next program because we're
Yes,
in
you
it.
are. And here's the thing as well, too, is that all of it's good. Like you don't have to pick a lane and go, I'm only going to do free stuff now, or I'm only going to do paid. I've done both and they both work well for different reasons. So but you do want to have ongoing free things that you're doing. And listen, that free stuff, like you're doing it right now. You are doing a free podcast. It's learning how everything that you do free and or paid, you give it multiple lives. So this podcast episode that's audio could have another life by becoming video, right? Going on YouTube, can have another life by being reposted many different ways on social, can have another life by creating some type of a Coles Notes PDF and it becomes an opt-in for something, becomes another life by being something that you go and you actually hyperlink into an article that you're writing, a program that you're running. It becomes a conversation starter in DMs when someone's reaching out and saying, hey, this is my struggle. And you're like, cool. Did you listen to this episode where we dove into da 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 da? Send me, DM me, whatever. And and the whole goal though in this is true lead generation is not about likes. It's about getting someone onto your email list. We don't own anything in the land of social. So it really is like creating an opportunity where it's like, okay, here, I'll send you this thing. That's the freebie. I just need your name and your email. And then they get into your email list. And now that's where you can actually nurture someone. Instagram is really interesting. Any social platform, Instagram, TikTok, that I choose one and I stick on it. Like I'm not the TikTok person. I am not going to entertain people in the way that they want to because I'm an educator. The role for me in TikTok is not going to be what it could be. And TikTok is just a little bit of the Wild West. And so I just kind of hang where I feel comfortable. And
Mhm.
so it's, you're building that relationship with someone, but to properly nurture and run what you're talking like a funnel for everyone listening, all it means is that when someone opts into that free guide, the free gift, your top tips, you now create a nurture sequence, which is a funnel of emails, could be 3, 5, 7 emails, where you're continuing to provide resources, education, develop a deeper relationship, and then you create a call to action, an ask. You can sell something. You invite them into a call. You provide a link where they can, do work with you. And all those things are wonderful. But it's like understanding the juxtaposition of business. These last couple of years, like mid 2020, all the way through until end of 2022, was an online frenzy of programs. Like everyone was like, take my credit card, like no problem for registrations. 2023 hit and
Mhm.
everyone started, and it happened like overnight. And I could start to see it and feel it. It was like in October of 20, no, it was before that. It was, what year is it now? 2024. It was about a year and a half ago. I was like, something's shifting. And what's interesting is like in business, there is always these parallels to whatever, like people aren't only consuming your content. So if the content they're consuming is financial fear mongering, inflation, life is more expensive, pinch your pennies, cancel your Disney subscription. All these different messages are coming into people. And we don't realize how impacted we are by this until the thing that we've looked at that is, we're like, I need this in my life, but how much is it? Can't afford it, can't afford it. That becomes our new mantra. Can't afford to go and spend the money and invest in other things. And now consumers are purchasing much more differently. The person who is maybe interested in doing a big base community program is now looking for the in-person, not online. They're looking for one-to-one again, not the masses. And so it doesn't mean anything is wrong with you, your offer, your program, any of that. You need to shift and re-angle how you're positioning it. And that can be through the way you're describing it, or the what the person is going to receive, the transformation, those kind of things. But it also can mean that you actually have to take a little bit of a grassroots approach in your business again. If you're that person that for the last few years everyone was telling you niche down, stop doing one-to-one, everything is like one-to-many now, do groups. And people are now on a pause where they're like, I don't want to do the group stuff anymore. I need to do individual work. Are you the one who's prepared to start to go back and do some one-to-one sessions to generate some frickin' income again? And
Mhm.
this is where we get in our way, is it's like, but I created my signature program. Cool. Do you have money coming in? Because if you don't, you're going to have to go and start to book people one-on-one again. And you can still run your program, but book the one-on-one people, feed them into the program. Like you have to get creative again. And business is going to do this every 6 to 36 months. You're going to feel like you have figured it out. And then something's going to happen and you're going to be like, nothing is working that used to work. And so it's not about now you have to get to work and work harder. You have to stop zooming in and you have to pull back, throw it up on the wall and look at it 50 different ways. And you have to have this energy of like, fuck it, I'm just going to try this and go and try it and see what works. What I am seeing happen right now, because I mentor a lot of women in business, is the frustration is keeping people stuck. And now they're more comfortable being frustrated about what's not working than they are about just like parking that on the side and let's just friggin' try something new. People who were very easily generating 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a month in their business, that has now dropped in half for majority of people, if not more, and they don't know what to do and they panic. And so they try and throw more ad spend, or they try and like change the funnel a little bit. And I'm like, can you just put that thing that was your main moneymaker on the side for a second? Let's get to work over here. And one of the things I see people not doing enough is you have to get back to connecting with your community and friggin' ask them what they are struggling with. What
Yeah.
is it, right? Like, yeah.
Well, okay, you said it with the money thing. Before you could change your relationship with money and bring more in, you had to fortify the foundation. Like, it's amazing hearing that now you're bringing in millions, but there was a while there where you were eating pasta and beans for dinner and like strictly budgeting. Why? Well, of course you can't bring in more if you're not already good with the things that you have.
Yeah.
And that's what I see when people right now are stressed about money. They are getting all this messaging just like you identified. So they're doubling down on the things that aren't working. They're not zooming out. and they're looking for more money, I need more people in my space, more likes, more followers, more people in my programs, and they're neglecting the people that are already there. When
And
you and I
those are the ones that you will actually like. It is much easier to work on your attrition or your churn rate and keep the people who are right in front of you than it is to go and try and find new people. And that's the problem oftentimes, is that we are ignoring like literally who's right in front of us to try to jump over them to get to someone else. And I mean, this is like a whole nother conversation that we could have just around that concept right there. But when we kind of come back and talk about that money side of things, you know, saving was part of it. Selling and paying off that loan was another part. But the other thing was understanding that as money was starting to be generated and I was making more and it was coming in, it was knowing what to do with that, because it wasn't going in and building up that emergency fund. It was understanding what it meant to invest money. And, you know, my husband is a custom builder and we had opportunities back then to like get involved in real estate. And if we had just gone to the bank to go and buy properties and become landlords, it would have been much harder. And so we had to start to have conversations with different people again, people we knew who had multiple properties and were renting them out, and go and ask them, hey, how'd you do that? And find answers and go and create it for ourselves. Learning about second mortgages when money was coming in. Learn from people. Hey, how'd you do that? Okay, awesome. Who's your connection? Great. Set up a meeting with them. Go and make that happen. What do you mean we should be buying gold and silver? Hey, how do you do that? Cool. Oh, okay. You have a contact? Awesome. I'm going to go buy a safe so I can go buy that stuff and then like have those things in my house. Oh, crypto? Well, what's that all about? Where do I learn? Oh, I need to do this. Okay, cool. And so it was, you know, and we're fortunate, like my husband and I were on the same page, but we have different skill sets. Chris's brain, when it comes to like finance and numbers, like he has an engineering mind. He builds things out of nothing. Okay. I don't even know how to sew a button back on a piece of clothing. So that's not how my brain works. And I know that about me. However, I am really good when it comes to understanding the way that money works and how you alchemize that, like the energy of money. I can understand compounding interest. I understand the long game. I understand that it's sitting in a bank account that might be generating you 2% back interest is ridiculous when you could have it in something that is generating you an asset or that is generating you 8, 9, 12, 13% interest. I understand that there's risk associated, but there's also risk with just leaving it there. And so, you know, we have spent, because this is only 12 years ago when we were in this massive amount of debt. And we've spent the last decade and a bit, you know, we had money meetings every Friday for a very long time in our relationship as we were getting out of debt and money was coming in, because it was like we started to understand that if we were going to be intentional about the things we were doing in life, we should also probably give intention to our money. Like where is it going as it's coming in? And so we sit in a very different position and we do not know everything. But like even in the last year, my husband ended up becoming a licensed broker because we asked questions and had different conversations. And it was like, he's like, I love this. I can get my license. I can manage our own finances. I want to help other entrepreneurs, because so many of our friends are entrepreneurs and so many are struggling. Like so many people that you look at out in the world, on the surface, it looks like everything is going great. And then you find out they are leveraged out the wazoo. And that if they just made this tiny 2 millimeter shift with what they're doing with their finances, with creating a family trust or generational wealth for their children, it could completely change the whole trajectory of everything that's happening in their life. And so it's been really cool. We've really just started to talk about it openly in the last little bit, because people have started to ask us, how do you own homes in different places? How do you do this thing? And we're like, oh, okay, maybe we should actually have like an open conversation about this, because I don't think it's fair that only a certain handful of people get to be in the room and have the opportunity to just hear other people's experiences. And like I said, by no means are we experts of these, like, you know, multi-million, like not even maybe. But we've just learned some things along the way that I think are accessible for most people. And it's really cool because I work with women's bodies and their health, helping them to actually unlock what they already know is possible. They just don't know how to do it on their own, or they're terrified to discover what is actually maybe going on in their health and their body. They're terrified that it's going to take more time because they're already so exhausted. They're already so overwhelmed that they're like, I can't do anything more. So I'm not feeling great, but I'll just keep managing this because it's way easier than me having to go and do all this stuff that you're maybe going to tell me to do. And so, we were talking about this, I think, before we hit record for the real time, is that our health as individuals, it is not separate from our wealth that we desire to have in our life. And I'm not just talking wealth of like money. I mean, I think living a wealthy life means that you get to have slow mornings. You get to have the autonomy to choose what you do in your day. You get to be in a position where you don't always feel like you have to work 7 days a week. And like we worked 7 days a week for a long frigging time. Sometimes I still do, but I choose to. I don't feel like, oh my God, I've got to work or there's not going to be enough. Um, yeah.
Well, there's going to be some people listening and they're going to say, well, Jen, what you just told us sounds like a whole lot of hard work. There was a lot of strategy, there's a lot of free content. Now I have to educate myself and, building what you built is a lot of work.
Mhm.
So how do we then create the time? Like, how do we build the thing, but then also have these slow mornings and take care of ourselves and like get into cyclical living? Because what people are going to ask, and we might have to just bring you back for a part two,
Yeah.
how do you do both? How do you find the time to create a sound strategy that is efficient and gives you time?
They don't all happen at the same time. This is the important thing for people to understand. Like I didn't have slow mornings when I was building it.
Hmm. Thank
It's really important to be honest about that. Like I didn't have this, what I'm talking, and that's the whole thing is, like I said, this has been almost 28 years from, conception of this business at 17 to where I'm at 45. It's been 12 years since I hit my first rock bottom in business. It's been 8 years since I sold the company. It's been 7 years since I started the first program online. I've had a lot of weeks and months and years to chip away at this and do the hard stuff so I could get to a point where there's more time. But I will tell you, even back then, when we were in debt, when the kids were little, I still, like, for me, I had to have time in the day to move my body just for me. I used to do these videos and I would share them on YouTube and I would call them my 10-minute mommy, work it circuits. And literally the kids would be with me, around me, on me sometimes. And I would just set the timer for 10 minutes. And I would like squat for 1 minute. I would lunge on one leg for a minute, lunge on the other for a minute. I would plank over top of my kids for 1 minute. I would, run up and down the stairs for one, and I would just do those. And it was 10 minutes out of a 24-hour day. But I was like, if I needed slower mornings, like back in the day when the kids were little, we had a TV in our bedroom. Why? It wasn't us watching it. It's so that when they woke up at the crack of freaking dawn and I needed to get myself ready and like get my head on straight, I could have their little snack bowls with their sippy cups in the bed, watching Treehouse for however long it took me to go into the bathroom and just like close the door and know they were safe and just take a freaking moment for myself. It was saying to my family, I'm going to go up and run a bath and not run a bath, but sit in the bath with no water and just be like, holy fucking shit, I'm so tired. Okay, what do I need to focus on? Like those were how I had slow moments in the beginning. When I would finish work at the end of the day, almost every single time when I would come home, I wouldn't pull into the driveway right away. I would pull onto the street. I would park down the street. I would turn the car off because I had to transition. I had to transition from like running a business to now being able to go into the door and be a mom and be a wife where everyone was going to need me in that way. And so, my kids now are teens. I'm the one begging them for time.
Yeah.
Like their life's way cooler than mine. And I am like, when are you going to be home? And when do we get to see one another? And so there's that. The content piece, you have to become a ninja with your time. You really do. And you have to batch it. And so the problem is that everyone is saying, I don't have time, it's too much work. But y'all are consuming everyone else's stuff on Instagram and social hours a day. And that's why you don't have time to create your own stuff, because you're stuck in imposter syndrome and comparing and getting inspiration and ideas from everyone else. You have to stop that and you have to plug it away. And it's like, can you chunk out 2 hours once a week to sit down and create 2 posts? Sweet. There's your post for the week. You don't have to post. We post multiple times a day. You do not have to do that. We just have a lot to say. Okay. You don't have to do that. If you were to put out 1 or 2 awesome pieces of content that are so in alignment with who you are and what you do and what people could expect from you, oh my gosh, your return on engagement and on the right people seeing it, like, don't worry if it's 100 people who see it. What if it was like 6 of the best qualified people? And out of those 6 people, you got your next best 1 client out of those 6. Like, that is actually how it starts to happen. This illusion that we're being sold, like you're going to have, 50 people sign up right away, or even 5 people. I am supporting people all the time who have these programs. And the first thing I would say is, this is my opinion, and I do have some evidence to back up the opinion. But if you don't already have a thriving community where you've built a one-to-one practice and have people, this is not the best time to run a group program. You don't have enough people to be filling up your group program. And it's like you said, you're going to go launch it. It's going to feel like a flop. It's not a flop. You just didn't have enough people to get to move into it. So if that's your issue right now, my suggestion to you wouldn't even be about sitting online and creating content. Why aren't you going to local businesses, to other successful places, and offering to teach something for free there and getting those people in? Why aren't you going where there's already other customers who you don't do the exact same thing, but you do something complementary and similar? They're doing all of the advertising, the marketing. They probably handle the registration. Your only request is that you're going to get to choose the date and time, and you're going to get the opportunity to send a thank you email to those people so you get their emails for your list. How many businesses, clinics, wellness spaces, grocery stores, lunch and learns, banks, corporates, schools, all those different things could you go and pitch yourself to? But we sit here and we go, well, everything I'm trying isn't working. No, what you're doing is you're picking up your phone, you're doing a post, you're sending a few emails, and you're telling yourself you're doing everything and nothing is working. You're doing 2 things and they didn't work. I could give you 25 other fucking ideas of
Yes.
things that you could go and do. And I want to tell you something. I live in a brand new community. Nobody knew me when I landed here. And we moved during COVID, and, we weren't able to go to the majority of the places. So I feel like I've only been where I live in Kelowna now for less than a year. I only came out of my shell 6 months ago. I am going to those businesses and teaching and hosting free classes. And can I write for your newsletter and and I run a multi-million-dollar company, and I am going to businesses and knocking on the door and asking, how can I be part of what you're doing and serve your community? I'm trying to build myself up here.
I want to stand up and applaud right now. You never know how these conversations are going to go, but this is just a very real look at business, because we're doing women a real disservice. The pendulum always swings, right? So there was a lot of women that got stuck in the hustle, they got stuck in the masculine, they got stuck in the burnout, and then we flipped and we went over to the other side. And when this big blow up online happened, there were also a bunch of coaches that arose that actually don't have the kind of experience and expertise or training or education. It's like a big pain point of mine, that
Yeah.
are teaching women, and maybe my audience disagrees with me, but that you can just manifest things in, that you can just show up with your energy. And the problem with that is there's a lot of women that actually aren't working hard. There's the burnout crew for sure that are working way too hard, but there's a whole bunch of women manifesting, casually working, lying to themselves by being on their phone that they're doing what it takes to grow a business. And then they're starting to feel bad about themselves because it's not working.
Yeah.
And we need both things. We need our energy right, right? We need to be in a place where we're inspired and can actually bring people into our world because energy attracts. But this masculine energy needs to stay. We
Yeah.
need these things.
Listen, there is a yin and a yang to it for a reason. It's like, you know, I, for me, it's more natural to jump into the masculine of how I show up and I function because I love what I do. And for me, if I'm really passionate about something, I am like, I just want to give her and I just want to go. I don't even know if that's masculine energy or honestly, if it's just being lit up about the work I do. The feminine part of me, though, is like how I have to drop into that isn't about manifesting what I desire. It's about checking in daily to make sure I'm in alignment with what I'm doing and who I am. And it's for me, femininity is showing up in other ways. Like I don't have the ability to flip the switch and not actively participate in the things that I want to do because that might not be feminine. So I wear earrings, I wear color, I put lipstick on. Like I do those kind of things so that even when I see myself, I'm like, look at you, beautiful woman who's like embracing her femininity and doing those things. It's an energy, it's not a role that we play. And what we've been trying to do is we've been trying to play these roles of like, I'm going to be the feminine, you know, over here and all of that. And listen, I believe in manifestation. I believe in alchemy. I believe in energy. Like I am so much more woo than people understand, like at my core and how I live my life. But I also believe in inspired, aligned action. And the problem in these last few years is we are so inspired and we are feeling so connected, which is beautiful, but we are lacking action. We are not taking the aligned action. We think if we journal about it, if we talk about it, if we connect with our guides, which I do all of these things, that is just, it's going to drop in our sphere. And that is part of it. But that's like saying the whole recipe for food is one ingredient. It's not, right? Like there's many different things that have to go into that. And so here's the other thing I want to say on it. Entrepreneurship is not easy. It is not cut out for everyone. Some people in business are best to actually be part of an entrepreneur's company, to be a subcontractor, to still have the autonomy to do the things you want to do, but go and be in part of a company where somebody has already figured the shit out and they have like an engine that is already going. And now you get to go be inside of that. You still get to be creative. You still get the opportunity to, you know, host things and do all of that, but you don't have to be the one that is steering the ship because it is a lot of responsibility. Like I am responsible for 8 other women's income that they are bringing into their family and household. That is a lot of responsibility. I am responsible for every decision. I am responsible for our editorial calendar, all of those things. It comes back on me. And that is something that is not for everyone. And I even sit back and forth and like, I know in the next 3 to 5 years, I will have a team that's going to be half the size because that's what I desire. I know what I want to do moving forward. I know how hard I want to work. I know what I want that to feel like. And I understand what I need to do now to shape shift that so that I'm ready for it when it comes down the road. And it's knowing it in business and it's knowing it in your lifestyle. So it might mean that you need to move into a smaller house. You might need less expensive vehicles. You might not be shopping and buying the clothes and the shoes and the bags. It might mean that you grocery shop in different places. It might mean that, you know, you bulk buy your meat from the butcher as opposed to like all these little things that we don't think add up. What I said an hour ago when I was like, we had to study our habits as much as we had to understand where our money was going. We tracked every single penny for an entire year. I knew our statements and our habits. Like you could have asked me anything and I was like, this, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. And so when we started to learn our habits, we learned about ourselves. And it was like, oh, these are our priorities. Interesting. We will spend the most money on the quality of our food. This is a value for us. This is really important. So I will do whatever I can to make sure I don't have to compromise the quality of our food. Clothes and cars and that kind of stuff, I give zero shits about. I've had what I'm wearing for 10 years right now. I do not care about the label on something at all, at all. My earrings are all from Forever 21 from like a million years ago. They turn my ears green. Cool. I don't care about that kind of stuff, but I
Yeah.
care about the quality of what goes in our body. I care, like I want to travel with my family. So when you also get really specific about like what matters the most, following a budget and being able to trim some other stuff, it doesn't matter as much. The final thing I'll say in that we did, and this is, one thing my husband really helps a lot of people with right now with like debt consolidation, is we called up every provider of every company of every bill that we had, and we started a conversation with them, and we're like, how can we decrease our payment? How can we do this? How can we do that? And we found hundreds of dollars every single month started to come back into our pocket that we could reallocate from things we were not using. Memberships, subscriptions, plans that were just way bigger than what it is that we needed, all of these different things. And, I don't think we do enough of that because it's painful to get on the phone with providers, but you just spend one day calling all of your providers. I guarantee you will find money.
I'm so fired up for this conversation now, Jen. I am not taking care of my nervous system or resting today. I am getting shit after this.
Go for a walk first, integrate it, because it's a lot of information, right? And again, I want to reiterate this. I did not know all of these things at one time. I did not know these things. And so just like everyone listening, you don't have to know all of this right now. My best suggestion would be listen again, because the first time you hear stuff, A, you'll get triggered. B, you're going to hit a point of saturation where you're just like, whoa, my head is spinning. So go on a walk, listen to it, pause it, write some notes, and then like really look at it and be like, okay, what is like one thing she talked about where I actually kind of feel like this is something that I could do, or like we as a household or a partnership could consider doing, and start to chip away at it. We are still chipping away at this 12 years later. 12 years, still chipping away at it. We are in such a rush to like have it figured out now. Like time is just going to keep moving. You don't want to make life miserable, when you are doing this, but at the same time, you can't live with your head in the sand. Because what happens with your finances bleeds over into your business. What happens with your health bleeds over into your business. And what happens in your business can rob you of all the joy and all the health and all of the true wealth that you've ever wanted in your life. So it's not about trying to like solely focus on one thing, but it 100% as a woman is about leading with your body first and allowing your business to be what happens second. You have got to be in a place where you feel connected to yourself, and it is a practice. I am not at a place where I am like, oh, I've got it all figured out ever. And it's not even a goal of mine. It's not a goal. Every day that I wake up, just wake up with curiosity. How do I feel today? What do I want to do today? Cool. Okay, let's go do that.
That's simple.
Yeah, that is my simplicity factor. And it's like, I get it because again, everyone's looking at it through Instagram and stuff. Is we make it so much harder than it has to be. And then we put people on a pedestal and we make it like they're just perfect and have it all figured out. And it's all make believe. Like I've never said to someone or presented like, I am perfect and I have it figured out. But that is the belief a lot of people have about me. And then they get to know me and they're like, oh, you're just like us. And I'm like, uh-huh. And the thing that you're excellent at in your life, I am not. And I look at you and I'm like, wow, you are amazing. Like I've watched you over the years and like create the memes and do all that stuff and just how well you can speak and like on the fly and that. And I'm like, that's a fucking gift. Like I can't do some of those things. And so I don't look at that and be like, oh, I wish I could do that. I'm just like, I just praise it in other people. And we got to shift that energy as well too. Like clap for the other people, but then what's your gift? Because we all have one. We all have many, many gifts.
I love that. I can teach you how to meme. I can do
There you
it.
go.
I know you have to run for another appointment. How can people find you? I know you do retreats, you work with people. Do you still work with people one-on-one, or is it just group programs now?
I do some one-on-one, but typically the one-on-ones that I'm doing are with women who are in like a leadership role. And so they're really trying to focus on the pieces, right? It's the audacious woman, like her business and her body. And so, and women who are, they're at a point where they're like, they're ready to just cut the BS and like do the work. That's mainly who I work with one-on-one. The best way to connect with me is Instagram. It's where I spend most time. But I have different online programs. The Hormone Project, it is like hormone university for women. It'll teach you everything you ever should have known about your body, for yourself, for your kids. It is the thing I am most proud of creating is the Hormone Project, because it is changing the health of women and their own empowerment globally around the world. And then I have an online fitness studio that you can join from anywhere, podcast, YouTube, lots of things.
I love it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I'm going to bring
Thank
you
you.
back for round 2, 3, 4, and 5 because there's lots of avenues.
I'm here for it.
Amazing, Jen. Thank you so much. And everyone listening, we'll make sure to have all of those links in the show notes so you can go and check out Jen and see what she's all about. Find her on YouTube. And yeah, I highly, highly recommend checking out her programs.
Thank you.
Been underground, now I aim for the sky. Don't quit now, you can last longer. All these wounds only making you stronger. Don't